Hi. I don't usually like recording videos, but I just felt really drawn. I felt really drawn because in one day I had 3 beautiful sisters come up to me and they were like, I'm being called by the Magdalene, I'm being called by the Rose. Sophie, what is this? I'm also doing a lot of workshops and retreats and classes on this topic. To my surprise, I'm just hearing the call and just kind of following the thread. And I'm also obviously running a festival this year called Heart of the Rose with a very beautiful team. And it just feels like it's time for this message to be heard and is just ready to be received. And so really the way of the rose, it's a lineage that has existed through many times, space and dimensions, originally starting with Venus. And I'm not really going to go into the history of it at this time, but I more wanted to speak to what does it mean for us today. So for me, it really is this path of unconditional love and path of embodiment. For many centuries, we have separated God from the body, spirit from matter. Spiritual enlightenment involved transcending this physical plane. And unfortunately, that separation between God and the body, God and earth, has allowed all the pain and suffering that we are experiencing at this time. And this next step in humanity is really the feminine path of awakening, which is the journey down and in to the body, finding God through the body. And women inherently find God not through transcendence, but through the body. And so women, by their very nature, are the wayshowers of this new way of being in this world. And it's not new. Maybe it's new to us in this current timeline, but really how it's always destined to be, which is this deep recognition that the body, that matter, is inherently divine, is a holy expression of God. And this can be understood as a concept, but what we are really being called to experience at this time is a full, embodied, experiential understanding of this ancient wisdom. It's really the tantric path where we recognize that God is both beyond and within the body, and you are that. And so women, and really the path of the rose, is an expression of this embodiment where we start to awaken to the infinite formless awareness that we essentially are beyond and beneath this conditioned mind and personal self that we have taken ourselves to be. And then bring the descent, bring this awareness, this infinite stillness and unconditional love down into every single aspect of our being, of our humanity, so that we can essentially raise and uplift our humanity to its inherent divine potential, because it's already God in expression. The mind has just layered our experience with so much distortion, and we have been conditioned to live from this limited place of the mind. And the more we allow ourselves to drop the layers of the mind, naturally we actually start to experience God as the body. Because, and I say God, that's also just a concept, but we experience the essential love and bliss that is our nature through the body. And so this journey is one of really coming back to the heart. It's a spiritual awakening that's rooted here, that is really not trying to transcend or bypass, but to bring this love down, awaken it down, which is not easy. It's very easy to transcend. I can speak to my own journey a little bit on this, and it is an ever deepening journey. Never trust anyone when they say they've got there, because that's just a thought. There's no there to get. But my experience, my personal experience, was when I was in my early 20s, I had a very profound, spontaneous awakening where the mind dissolved. I speak about this a lot in my classes, in my teachings, and how just this question came into my mind, and it was like, if I'm not my mind and if I'm not my body, then who am I? And suddenly the infinite void of everything opened within me, and Sophie disappeared. And that lasted for about 3 weeks. And at the time, although I had been teaching meditation for a few years, I didn't have the context to fully understand what had happened. And at the time, I was also training to be a psychotherapist. And so my question was always, okay, how do I rest in this infinite space that has seemed to be uncovered within me, where no story really exists, but all stories are birthed from, and honour the very real stories my clients were bringing me? How do I hold it both? Which is the journey, this journey of awakening, this paradox of awakening. Can we hold it all in this infinite wholeness of now, which is already being held? We're just dropping the layers of mind that are creating any resistance to it. And so that happened, and then I did a 4-year training in psychotherapy, and had very deep, dark night of the soul, which inherently happens when we're on this journey. And the more we rest in the heart, the more we rest in awareness, the more we allow all that has been conditioned to arise within us. And so it was an awakening, and sometimes too many people rest in the awakening. And I know I did. I was like, well, I'm not my mind, I'm not my story. But actually, we can have a conceptual understanding and even experiential understanding of that. But if we haven't integrated that awakening into every core of our being, then it's still very disembodied, and we can still hold trauma in our body. And I learned that the hard way. And what's been interesting in my journey is that when I was training in America, I came across this article that really spoke about how this lineage that I had kind of inadvertently connected to, kind of mood, non-duality, because I was just searching for understanding what happened. It spoke to the fact that actually it was very masculine in its approach, which I hadn't even considered at the time, because I'd felt it was just beyond any gender, that it was just truth above truth. I'm not my mind, I'm not my body, which is true on an absolute level when one experiences that. But what happens when we stay in that place without fully integrating that knowledge down, we end up avoiding aspects of our personality because we think we're separate. There's ultimately a subtle duality in this non-duality if misunderstood. And so that article really awakened me to this idea that actually there was another way, there was a much more embodied path, which is what is so needed at this time, because we are and have been conditioned to be so disconnected from our bodies, so disconnected from our hearts, because it's hard to be in this world at this time. Like, our system is inherently traumatized by just being alive at this time. And so this is why we need to root and stabilize in this formless space beyond the mind before we can feel stable enough to then turn back towards our humanity, because we're able to hold it just a tiny bit lighter by recognizing it's not all that we are. All that we're seeing is not all that we are, and experience is not all that we are. But doesn't mean to negate what we're experiencing, but there's a ability to, from this place, move closer to these deeper, darker, more painful aspects of ourselves and the world, and hold it from this place of unconditional awareness. And so for me, the heart of the rose path didn't come until quite later. I was feeling very drawn to roses obscurely for like 3 years. Just couldn't get enough. And I'd always been interested in the Magdalene lineage from a very young age. I'd always been very drawn to the Essenes and the Cathars, and not everyone is. That was just my path. And then it was only a year and a bit ago that I knew my I got told that my Saturn, but I was going to get shown my destiny because my Saturn was going to cross my North Node Aquarius, and I was going to be shown stuff. And so I was kind of like wondering what that would be, already kind of knowing what I feel it is this lifetime, but actually didn't feel it was to do around specifically working with women. And that night I had a dream where I just went in and out of consciousness, literally, and just chanting over and over again, the way of the rose, the way of the rose, the way of the rose. And my womb and my body and the cells of my body were almost remembering this old lineage and way that it was now ready to remember and embody. The next day I Googled, thank God for Google, way of the rose, what is this? And it was at the same time I got a very strong vision to do this women's festival, which I speak a lot about in Heart of the Rose, and to call it Heart of the Rose, and to be shown that it's this path of unconditional love, and it's what's most needed for women to really, all genders to really wake up to this path, but also women specifically, because our bodies and our spirituality really has been negated for so long, and it's why we've become so out of balance. And there's this beautiful Sufi, he's by Llewellyn Vaughan-Lee, who I speak about a lot in my classes, and he says women contain within their cells the seed of creation differently from men, because whether they choose to give birth or not, they are able to bring spirit into matter differently from men. And when women awaken to their inherent nature as the matrix of creation, then all can start to come back into balance. I remember crying in my early 20s when I heard that, and I was just like, oh, this is why my soul chose to incarnate as a woman, because essentially our soul is genderless. I mean, some people say it's feminine, but or masculine in nature, but it's beyond any gender. This really is just part of the earth. Holographic reality we're in at this moment. So it's not better or worse in any way. It's up to us now to all honour the feminine within and around us, and women have a special role to play in that, because our inherent nature is shamanic, is kind of literally a portal to the other dimensions. And why when women were on their moon, they would go into the red tent and they would be able to see and vision, and the first shaman was women, because that was our inherent gift to the planet. And so, long story short, the path of the rose really is, in my opinion, what's needed in some way on the planet at this time. And it doesn't have to be called the path of the rose, but just this recognition that what is most needed on the planet right now is this unconditional love. And that can only come when we start to truly recognize our inherent essential being beneath and beyond the story. Because it's only from that place can we then see the innocence of the egoic mind that has created all this suffering, that has created all these difficulties in our lives, and move from that place with love and forgiveness and understanding, and obviously taking responsibility for whatever has been created, and also coming from this place of the heart, but like really embodied heart. And it's like I said, an ever deepening journey, an ever deepening dissolution into the heart. That beautiful saying, less me, more God, less of the mind, more of the divine can come through. And so I just felt to share this. I hope whoever's watching, and if you manage to get to the end, well done. Hope you take something away from it. I am going to be leading classes every other week, meditation class called Dissolving into Love, which is just a deep experiential understanding of how do we rest in this timeless place and allow every part of our body to receive this nurturing love. It really is the path of the Divine Mother. It's remembering that essential innocence of ourselves, and letting that love of the divine that we essentially are in and down. And I'm going to be doing a retreat, Wild Heart of the Feminine, obviously Heart of the Rose Festival, and teaching this at different festivals throughout the summer. The Path of the Rose, the Descent into Love is going to be the title. So, wow, long video. Sending so much love to you all on this epic, mystical journey of life. And maybe see some of you soon. Lots of love.